p.m. Monday through Friday. Sactown Sports.
All right, Jay. Moody with a long field goal to give the 49ers a 3-point lead with 1:57 to go. I still don't know how.
You're going to confuse Eric about this stuff.
Well, we'll see which side of the coin he's looking at. Locked on 49er host, former pro defensive back Eric Crocker, nice enough to join us. We appreciate your time, Eric. Want to know how you feel about this. Right now, NFL Network, they're showing the Super Bowl. The 49ers are up 3 with 1:53 left. I'm watching it. I don't know. I feel like I need to see it again. Jay, on the other hand, he doesn't even want to hear me talk about it. Which way are you in that game, Eric? You want to watch it again or just not even deal with it?
I refuse to watch it. I haven't watched any 49er Super Bowl games, and I really want to watch the 2012 game. Mm-hmm. I would love to, but I can't do it. What I need is I need the 49ers to win a Super Bowl so then I can go back and I kind of get that closure. Then I can go back and watch 2012. I feel like there were a lot of great players in that game. Frank Gore, Patrick Willis, Ray Lewis. I mean, there's just so many greats in that game. Ed Reed. I would love to go back and watch it. I can't until the 49ers win one. So I have not watched any of the 49ers postseason losses.
Thank you, Eric. I mean, at least we got somebody on here talking a little sense today, joined by Eric Crocker, Locked On 49ers. Of course,
I still don't know how they lost.
Because I'm going to cut his mic for you. You don't worry about it. We'll start with the obligatory Brandon Aiyuk question. I know you're out there, you're following it. You've been doing it for the last few years. What are your thoughts on Brandon Aiyuk not in pads, not in a helmet, on the sideline, talking to John Lynch? What's your thoughts right now?
So first, I'll start from a player's perspective. Any locker room I've ever been in, you don't worry about like a guy trying to get his money. Like that's his business. That's what he's trying to do. So I know some people would think that there might be some locker room issues or whatever. Like heck no. These guys all understand it's a business. I do what you gotta do to get your bread. Hopefully it works out because we want you on the field, of course. Now, from the perspective of like the business side of things, and I'll look at it from both perspectives. Aiyuk is in a tough spot. I think he has the ability to be what we've seen, and maybe even more if he had more opportunities. But unfortunately, he's in an offense with the 49ers where a lot of it kind of goes through Christian McCaffrey, whether it's in the run game, getting the Christian McCaffrey the ball in the passing game. I think when Kyle Shanahan lays his head down at night, it's how can I figure out more ways to get Christian McCaffrey involved? And then you look at just kind of the pecking order of it. You see everything George Kittle does in the run blocking game. You see what he's done in the passing game, having over 1,000 yards last year. Then Deebo Samuel, all the different ways they look to, the unique ways to utilize him and his skill set and getting the ball. And then you get to Brandon Aiyuk. And I didn't even start looking at it that way until I was talking to my big brother. He's a diehard Dallas Cowboys fan. And he said, you guys don't value Brandon Aiyuk the same way we value CeeDee Lamb. And he said this like middle of the season last year. And I'm like, man, what do you mean by that? He said, you guys don't do anything to feature him. You don't do anything to free him up. There's no motion to tight splits. There's no motion to trips or bunches where you're doing things to clear it out to where he's a focal point in your game plan. He's kind of just this X-receiver. They line him up. Hey, if you beat your man, these are good opportunities for you to get to Brock, but we're not going to do extra to make sure that you're featured. And when you think about a lot of other guys getting paid, that's exactly what those teams do. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's going to get his targets. CeeDee Lamb is going to get his targets. Jamar Chase, they're going to get their targets. And those guys are going to get paid, right? Justin Jefferson, they do a ton to make sure that he's involved and is going to get his targets and the ball. The 49ers is like, well, we can throw Aiyuk the ball 3 times in the game. We can throw him to him 8, 9 times, and we do not care. We're just going to run our offense. And I think that's the issue right there. They're not going to force anything to him. And if you're not going to do that, why are we going to pay you like these other guys are getting paid? And Aiyuk's probably looking at it like, dude, I've done everything you guys asked me to do. I block. I'm like the highest graded blocking receiver in the league. I get open. I can beat man. I can do all these things. I haven't complained at all. Like, I haven't talked about that. I haven't talked about targets until we lost in the Super Bowl. But I'm doing everything, and I've been the ultimate team player. You guys are going to use that against me? And I think that's why his feelings are hurt. And I think the 49ers may not move off of the number they're at because it doesn't make sense for their offense. So a very tight spot, really, for both sides of this, whether you're on the side of the 49ers or the side of Brandon Aiyuk.
That's Eric Crocker, Locked On 49ers host, former pro defensive back. So, Eric, it's not just Aiyuk. It's not so much him. It's the position he plays, right? And it's the way the 49ers value edge rushers and the quarterback more than they value a wide receiver in monetarily, right?
Yeah, and I think even more specifically, the way that they value him.
Really?
Like specifically, which I think they look at him, oh, he's a terrific player. They would love to keep him out there, but they don't do a whole lot extra with his position to make sure that he's going to, have his 100 yards a game. Like, they just don't care. So, yeah, it has a lot to do with that. Heck, we just see that Trent Williams is holding out. I bet you Trent Williams gets paid. Like, there's no way that, they let that guy at the position he plays and the importance of it and like how they factor that into the offense, they don't let that go without making sure he's taken care of. They don't value Aiyuk that same way.
Eric, moving on, and I like to kick over to something that I'm pretty sure is near and dear to your heart as you also coach high school.
Did you say kick? Because they just tied the game.
Man, we're not talking about that right
19
now.
3 seconds ago. We're going to overtime.
It's the Intrascott game against the Saints next week. Okay, I think we're going that way. Eric, the DB side, there's been so much question on who Ambry Thomas, playing outside, can't really play inside. It sounds like Demo is pretty much locked in as the nickel. Who do you think plays opposite on that corner side? The 49ers have added so many guys, 2, 3, 4 guys this past offseason via rookie and or free agency. Who do you think gets to start opposite Shavarius Ward?
That's $1 million question. I think for me, if we're talking about just pure base defense, I think it's still Diamador Lenoir. Now, when you go to a nickel package and you have to slide Diamador Lenoir into that nickel spot, now who makes sense on the outside? And I've heard a couple of different things thrown around. You would think that the second round pick, Green out of Florida State, like he'd have an opportunity to potentially compete for that. But it sounds like they might want him to start off in the nickel and learn more there starting off. So now that could be a potential issue. All right. Or not an issue, but just when it comes to the depth and where you're starting guys out, like it's like, why would, like, Green is an outside guy. Why would you not just have a start there? And then as he continues to play and learn and things like that, maybe he can make that transition into the nickel. But all right, you have Diamador Lenoir there. We'll see what they do with Green. But I think Yeatum, man, like, I'm excited to go. I'll be at training camp practice on Tuesday with my co-host Brian Peacock. I can't wait to see what Yeatum looks like. And does he take advantage of the opportunity at hand? You mentioned Ambry Thomas. He seems like he's like a long shot, not just to start, but he's going to make the team. And they like something about him. He's been hanging around. He's been kind of one of the next man up. But they've added some veterans like Rocky Sin and Chase Lucas, and then you added the rookie. I think things can get a little interesting in the sense of competition, and specifically for Ambry Thomas, being able to figure out what his role is going to be on that outside.
How do you think, and Eric Crocker's our guest here, Locked On 49ers pod host, how do you think the defense may look different, if it will at all, under the new coordinator, Nick Sorensen?
Well, it's a new coordinator on paper, but I've always said I think Kyle Shanahan is the defensive coordinator. He kind of has this style of defense that he wants to be played, and it's on the coaching staff to kind of adjust to what he's looking for. So unless Kyle changes his philosophy on where he thinks defense is going, I don't think you see much more of a difference in the sense of what it's going to look like on the field. I think they're going to play a lot of quarters. You're going to see some guys playing off. I don't think all of a sudden we're going to just see an influx of man coverage, even though you drafted a guy like Green, who is more of a man corner. I think the 49ers will play as much zone as they have. It'll look similar, and it's on the new defensive coordinator to make sure that he sees the game and the field the same way that Kyle Shanahan is. And I think that was an issue last year with Wilkes. I think Wilkes had an idea of how he wanted to run things and what he wanted to do. And I think you would assume that would have been ironed out before he got hired. But I think that was something that was really like kind of looming over the team the entire season.
Eric, let's stay right there because you're a defensive guy, man. We're kind of talking about schemes. And something that you brought up just a minute ago, most of the time the Niners, to me, I always feel like they run nickel, they run some type of coverage where they're only putting 2 linebackers on the field. And right now we know Dre Greenlaw is hurt, so it's probably going to be Devondre Campbell and Fred Warner. But the $1 million question is if they do play 3 linebackers, is that D Winters? Is that Flanagan Fowles? Do you think they'll kind of stay away from playing 3 linebackers and use way more nickel? Like, what do you think the defense is going to look like more or less this year?
I think that, Devondre Campbell, he's a guy, he's a veteran, and we'll see what happens with that. But, you talk about 2 linebackers being on the field. I wouldn't skip over D Winters in that role. Right now, like, people have been raving about what he looked like throughout OTAs in the offseason. It sounds like he's carried that momentum over to training camp. And D Winters is a guy with, like, a lot of high upside, a lot of ability, but, drafted a little bit later. Not the biggest of guys. 49ers aren't looking for these big, huge linebackers. They just want guys that can kind of fly around. Can they penetrate? Can they run sideline to sideline? And D Winters, he can do that very well. Now it's getting the mental aspect of things down. And I feel like with 49ers linebackers, that kind of year 2, year 3, they start to kind of come into their own. And they've done a great job with Coach Holland of developing those guys. So does D Winters take that next step to where we're not talking about Devondre Campbell, we're talking about D Winters or maybe even Jalen Graham?
Eric Crocker with us from the Locked On Niners podcast. We were, I was kidding about watching the Super Bowl here because it's on NFL Network, and you mentioned that 2012 Super Bowl. And, of course, the 49ers, after losing that one to the Ravens, they couldn't get back to the Super Bowl the next year. Do you like this team's chances? Is this team in a better position to get back to the Super Bowl this year after losing it last year, which that 2012 team couldn't do?
I think the tough thing is, like, trying to figure out, like, how great of an opportunity do you have? And I think when it comes to, the teams in the NFC, the 49ers have just as good of a chance, if not the best chance out of anyone there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about having a better chance to win the Super Bowl, that's a tough thing because I felt, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought, that was not the best version of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody in the league was going to get them, it was going to be last year. And somehow they scratched and clawed and figured out a way to where even though the offense wasn't clicking, obviously the defense played well, they still ended up pulling it out and winning a Super Bowl. So I do think that the 49ers should be favorites to win the NFC. And obviously it's not going to be a cakewalk. I think we're kind of spoiled with the 49ers it's playoff time for them to be in the conference championship, to have opportunity for the Super Bowl. Like we've just seen that year after year. And, I'm hoping like this isn't the year where all of a sudden it's like, first round, they just kind of get upset or something. But for me, I just look at what they do throughout the year to give me the confidence that they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think this team will be good. I think this team will be ready. But I thought last year's team was damn good, and it wasn't good enough, even versus the Kansas City Chiefs team, where I felt like that they weren't their strongest. And all they did was go and everybody leading up to the draft, they're going to draft Xavier Worthy. They're going to draft him. And what they do, they drafted him, and it felt like they got better. They drafted him the offensive tackle, second round, that's out there right now, protecting Patrick Mahomes. So I think they did things to get better. I think the 49ers, they seem like the same team. Can they just play better when it matters most? And that's going to be a big question.
Oh, Eric, I'll follow it up, and this will be the last one for me is if that's the case, let's say we go through that and the 49ers fall short. I'm knocking on wood, man, lifetime 49er fan. But if they fall short, how much smoke drops on Kyle Shanahan? And I know we're prognosticating past this year, but how much smoke falls on Kyle Shanahan? And do we start to talk about maybe, he's the Mark Jackson. We might need to bring in a Steve Kerr.
Oof.
It is tough, man. And the more I listen to Kyle Shanahan, and he was just talking with Tim Kawakami, I thought that was a great podcast.
Yeah.
It was great insight. I like him more and more. He comes off sometimes as kind of this a little arrogant, which, a lot of the great ones are, they have a little arrogant. But also a little, like, kind of stuck in his ways. That's how it comes off. But when you hear him talk, and he's talking to Tim Kawakami, I'm like, you know what? He's a lot more open to things than I expected. So that was one of the things where I'm like, he's kind of stuck in his ways. If he loses, it's going to be because of that. Well, that's not the case. And clearly he's open and willing to, like, try different things, do different things, and he has a great mindset for it. So, if he gets back to the conference championship game or the Super Bowl and you lose again, it is tough. And I think people are going to want to know what the answer is. But for me, as someone, you talked about 2012, we had 2012, 2013. There were some other years in there that were really ugly, and definitely some years prior to, like, 2011 that were ugly. do you want to risk starting over from that? And I'm not saying you can't get better than Kyle Shanahan, but he's doing a damn good job of making sure this is one of the most efficient offenses every year. They're aggressive with going after trying to get great players, whether it works out or whether it doesn't. But they're doing everything possible to field the best team and put them in the best position. And they're getting there. What is it going to take to get over that hump? I personally think is going to be the quarterback making the plays. And Brock Purdy, he's been terrific. But can you make the plays that aren't there to be made when they need to be made? And that's going to be the thing.
Yes, sir.
When you have Chris Jones who's running at you, he's a free runner, and Brandon Aiyuk is open backside because the DB falls. Nobody faults you for not seeing that. You were looking front side, you threw it, you missed it, whatever the case is. You got a free runner at you. I understand why that can put you in a panic. But man, it would have been nice for somehow, some miraculous way, he finds Aiyuk in the back of the end zone, and you put a little bit more pressure on Kansas City, right? Just things like that. It's going to take those kind of plays, the plays that aren't there to be made, but you figure out a way to make it. And that's what we've seen from Patrick Mahomes in the biggest moments where he needs to be big and he needs to make that play against the 49ers in that big moment. He did it. And I think Kyle is going to have to figure out how to get his quarterback to do that. And I think Brock Purdy has that kind of ability going into year 3. Now he just kind of has to take the next step in doing that. And we've seen him do it, but now it's like, okay, you got to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to do it again now. Oh, it's a Super Bowl, 4th quarter game online. Now you have to do it again. And that's what it's going to take for the 49ers to win the Super Bowl.
You got to do it again, and you got to do it better. Yeah, Eric Crocker, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend. We hope to talk to you again soon.
Yes, sir.
All right. When we come back, Brock Purdy, is he really bad at the things that his critics say he's bad at? We will crunch some numbers, take a deep dive next on Sactown Sports.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money